Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our What's Up Wednesday webinar, The Bridge, Noble County Public Library's Makerspace. My name is Courtney Brown, and I'm the Southeast Regional Coordinator from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I'll be the question moderator today. Paula Newcomb, the Northeast Regional Coordinator, will be our host, and she's in Noble County this morning. Our presenters are Derrick Leatherman, IT Services Manager, and Austin Smith, Technology Coordinator, both at Noble County Public Library. Just a couple of announcements. To register for other webinars or other trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library. For a full list of our current in-person training menu, please see our continuing education website. This session is about an hour, so you'll receive one LEU for this presentation. If you're watching an archived recording of this webinar, instructions on how to obtain your LEU are in the video's description on YouTube, where you can also find those instructions on the ISL's continuing education site under LEU policies. So without further ado, I will turn the presentation over to Paula, Derrick, and Austin.
All right, this is Paula, and I'm going to be behind the camera. And again, I apologize. I hope I do not make you seasick when I move the camera. And let me start with one thing. I'm going to talk about Noble County Public Library. It's not quite a whole county library. There's two other separate libraries in this county, Kendallville and Ligonier. But this library has a staff of about 21, 22 people. They've got 3 branches. And the size of the community is about 24,000 people. So why I say that, it is doable for hopefully that, your size community. I know it depends on your tax base, but anyway, I wanted to start out with that. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a few questions to both Derrick and Austin. And also please put questions in the chat as we go. After we get through some of these initial questions, we're going to walk around the room and show you how, we'll talk about, or Derrick will talk about the different machines they've got. So starting off, what is your background? So either Derrick or Austin, start off and tell us about that.
I'll go ahead and go first. I'm Derrick. I started off as a music education major. I had, and our director and I have talked about this many, many times. It's actually kind of hilarious that I had no intention of ever wanting to work at a library. I started as an intern in 2011, and I just fell head over heels in love with the library and decided to change my career path to IT. So I shifted my major at school. I went from music education, I shifted to IT, and then I started working and doing the IT stuff at the library with the IT person who was here at the time, who was on his way leaving the library. After he left, I took over, and I've been here doing all of this stuff. So I didn't start as intending to be a part of a makerspace. I didn't start intending to even work at a library, but I absolutely love it, and I can't think of anything better to do.
My name is Austin Smith. I'm from Albion. I graduated high school in 21, and while I was in high school is when I applied for the job at the library as a page for a couple of years and turned into an intern. And during my senior year of high school, I started doing some job shadowing work with Derrick in the IT department. And while I was there, I was able to learn the IT and the bridge. And I also never had any intentions of working in a library. I wanted to work in IT. I knew that since early high school. And I went to Sandy and I asked if I could do some job shadowing to learn the job. And once I got here, I was able to stay on going into college, and now I'm out of college and I'm here full time now with Derrick.
Great.
Library captures people.
Yeah.
And it's great.
So how did this area get started?
Well, everything started with one single machine as kind of a test to see if it was even something that we wanted to do or whether there would be interest with it. We started with a 3D printer. It was the MakerBot Replicator 2X, which was the dual extrusion printer that MakerBot had at the time. It was sort of their experimental machine, and we used it similarly as an experimental machine to see if it was something that we could even do. We didn't have a room when we started. The machine sat right next to me on my desk That was before we had remodeled the library. We didn't even know if it would take off, if people would use it, how it would go, but it did really work. We had some people that would come in, and a few of the kids I would bring back and I would set them next to me and let them kind of see how the machine worked, see their parts going and printing inside of it and explain things to them. But for the most part, when we had adults that were interested in doing something at that time, we did have them send us a file and we would load it into the printer and have it so that they could pick it up later. That wasn't our intention to do that permanently, but that's how we started with it.
So can anyone use the Makerspace?
Yes, you don't have to have a library card with our library. You don't have to even live inside of Albion or Noble County. We do get some people that come from outside of our county and come here to use our equipment. It is available to anybody, regardless of library card status or anything. They can come in and use it.
Great. So now you said this was the question that people ask a lot. Is there a cost?
There is. We charge typically for the material cost. We don't charge for the use of the machine. We don't charge for wear and tear on the machine, but we do charge based on anything that could be consumable for the machine. So in the case of our laser cutter, which we'll show in a little while, it has air filters that get clogged up with dust and dirt and debris, and those have to be replaced. Those are about $250. So based on the price point of that and about how long we expect that to last, we break that down by project and we come up with a price for our materials. Some materials are kind of dustier, dirtier, a little bit smokier when they're being cut. Some are much cleaner. So we kind of adjust that based on the price of the material and any consumables that would be used.
So do patrons get certified to use the computer or the equipment before they can touch them?
That's okay. So there's a two-part to that. Patrons can become certified. The way that they do that is they come in and they work with us. They work with Austin or they work with me, and they can come in during appointment hours for a one-on-one session, or they can come in during open hours and they can kind of test their skills because there may be other patrons in here during that time. But we do have 3 different types of hours. We have open hours that are available for walk-ins, and that's a first come first serve. So if we get 3 people that walk in and everybody wants to use the Glowforge at that time, we typically will work with the first person that comes in and try and get through as many of those projects as we possibly can to help people get what they're wanting to do done. And training is part of that. The one-on-one hours are for somebody who's kind of wanting to dive in a little bit deeper or to do something that they want to focus on it, but they don't want to be interrupted by potential other projects going on in the room. They can come in during those times and they can use the equipment with us, and we can help teach them how it works. We can teach them the software. We can teach them what happens if there's a problem during their print or their cut or whatever they're doing. And then they use that to become certified. So once they have reached a point where they're comfortable, we will usually do an appointment with them, and they come in during that time with a project that they're wanting to do. They do it on their own. And if we make it to the end of it and they have had no questions and they're comfortable and we've been comfortable with how everything has gone, they would have waivers they sign. We used to have like a test, but everything would change so quickly that we decided to do this more on the comfort level because everybody's different. So we get people that come in and they're ready in a couple days, and other people who it might take several months before they're fully ready to use it on their own. Some people never, and that's okay too, because we're here to help guide them.
That made me think of another question. Do you have an age limit?
The age limit for the certification is 18. We do require that they're 18 for that, but we don't have an age limit for anybody to come in. So we do have kids that come in. Typically they're middle schooler age or high school age. That actually just happened on Monday. We had some middle schoolers in here that were doing some 3D printing projects. We don't say that they can't. There are things that we do differently when we have youth come in. There are machines that, for example, we have a Form 2 resin printer, and the resin is not safe to come in contact with kids. So we do make sure that we handle that portion of the process, but we help guide them and we teach them the process. We guide them through designing their 3D print. We help them load it into the machine and tell them how the supports are going to work with their part. If there's going to be a piece that they need to kind of angle a little bit because it's going to form a suction when it's inside the 3D printer, we go over all that stuff and like the anatomy of the 3D print.
Okay, do you have classes?
We don't do large classes. We typically just stick to the one-on-one trainings with the open or the appointment hours, I'm sorry. And that's just because we have found that people are on very different levels when they come in. And if you do a beginner 3D printing class, you might get someone who has never even seen a 3D printer, or you might get someone who has a 3D printer in their house and they're looking to expand their skills on it. But to them, they're a beginner in both respects. So it's easier for us to tailor our educational portion of the bridge to that individual patron.
How hard is it to keep everything updated?
Occasionally that can be a struggle. It depends on how quickly things update and how big the updates are. A lot of the times what Austin and I will do is we have a lot of the software on our computers, and when there's an update, we'll update it on our computers before we update it on the computers here. And we'll do some testing with it to make sure that everything's going to work the same as it did before, or if something's going to break, or if we need to think of a different way to do it. That has been an issue where the MakerBot that we'll show in a while, the first machine that we got, it was in 2015 when we bought that. And it's updated so many times, and MakerBot has moved on from that machine. So the software that we were using with it became no longer available and didn't work with the machine. So the update had to be to an entirely new piece of software. So that does happen. And as long as you've got somebody who is kind of staying on top of that, that helps a lot.
Then when it comes to something like supplies, we always try to, like, say it's a roll of paper, we try to have one extra in stock, or if it runs out or whatever the supply is, we have extra.
I've got one other question I'm thinking before we head out to, well, there's some community questions too. Have you used the Makerspace for library programs? And I know that they had a huge program around Halloween. So
we do. We have used, so some of our programmers have used them to use the Makerspace to create stencils for painting programs, glass etching. There will be flyers that are printed for our marketing using our large format printer, and that then is all put out through the library. Some of it can be put into the town. We have done things with the Glowforge and the CNC for Stone's Trace, which is an event that is kind of on the west side of the county, and it's like a pioneer-y type event. So we made some hobby horse heads, and they did horse races with those. So it's kind of fun. But we do use them for programs and library events. But mostly it is the patrons that are using the bulk of everything in here.
I guess maybe this last one I'll combine a little bit. What does the community think? How does it help the community? And also your director mentioned the EDC. So however you want to put that together.
Okay. Well, our community has adopted the bridge fairly well. We get a lot of people who come in, and especially now that we have moved locations, we get a lot of people who can see into the room and they're interested and intrigued by what we have in here, and they'll come in and just ask questions even. We have a lot of entrepreneurs that are currently using the Makerspace as sort of their way to kind of launch their business and to get themselves off the ground. They come in, and usually they're the ones that do get the bulk of our certifications. They will come in and they'll make banners and flyers for their booths that they're going to take to shows. They'll use our Glowforge to cut leather or engrave on leather for some of the pieces they're making. They've done pegboards in our CNC machine to hang up their stuff. So display pieces, they've done all kinds of stuff with the bridge. So our entrepreneurial ecosystem is really, really a big part of what the bridge does. And it's kind of become our focus lately, is to kind of promote and to push that people can create with their ideas and make a living with what they enjoy doing. The EDC has picked up on a little bit of that too, and is wanting to work with us with potential ways to find out how they can assist grow that even further. We've been working with the town a little bit to add in some printer situations where the EDC has requested that we try and add printers that are able to fold and copy and staple, or fold and staple and all that, for our entrepreneurs to hand out brochures at their programs and stuff. So that's in the works. It's not done yet, but we are beginning the process of working with the EDC on that.
Okay, and how has it grown? It's our last question.
Well, like I mentioned, it started with one single machine and it sat on my desk. And we have since, we've done a remodel project. We built a space that was, it was intended for the bridge, but when we were doing the remodel project, the architect did want to move the makerspace and have it be sort of in like a back corner of the library, because they thought that that would be the most ideal space to put it. But our director and some of us did kind of push for it to be sort of front when you walk in, because it was new and it was something that we didn't know if people would even understand what it was. So we wanted it to be right as soon as you walked in the door, you saw the makerspace. Get people to ask questions and maybe come in and see if there was something that they were interested in using. And that did work. We got to the point where it worked so well that when we would have open hours for patrons to come in, that it would be a little crammed in there sometimes. And our machines were used so much that some of them broke. So we upgraded and we got larger machines and we started to outgrow that space. So we did have to move into a different space. But because we started off front and center, and it was just the first thing you saw kind of when you walked into the library, it kind of gave us a launching point. And now we are sort of in a little bit of a corner, but we've sort of established ourselves and people know that we're here now.
Great.
So,
all right. Well, I'm going to see, we're going to move around now. So let's go check out the area. Again, I hope I don't go too fast.
So like I mentioned, we started off with a MakerBot, which is this machine right here. So we've had this machine since 2015. It was like a pre-part to our remodel project, because we had intended to add a makerspace, but we kind of like wanted to see how it would go first. So we thought a 3D printer would be a great spot to start. We started with it. I struggled with it for quite a while trying to get a successful print out of it. But my first actual successful print was this T-Rex skull, and its jaw detaches. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I set settings wrong, and this did take 2 days to complete. And since then, I've learned how to, adjust the walls and adjust the material thickness on the inside. And I explain that to patrons now. Austin explains that to patrons now while we're going through and telling them how this works. This is a filament printer. And a lot of our patrons will use this for prototyping. We've had people come in that create brackets for lighting, and before they go out to the manufacturer to have something actually cut in metal, they want to see if it's going to fit. So they'll create something in here, take it home, do some testing, tweak it, come back, print another one, because the cost of the material is fairly cheap. And so they can do that pretty quickly rather than having it machine milled or something and then have to have it milled again because it didn't fit. And then after we had this one, we did migrate into a resin printer, which is just a little bit further over here. This is the Form 2. This is a stereolithographic resin printer. and it uses a laser on the bottom of an optical window and uses a resin that can be cured with that laser, and it pulls the piece kind of out of a tank of goo. It comes out all sticky and drippy and everything, and that's what we don't let the kids come in contact with. Afterwards, it does get washed in this agitating machine. So this is filled with isopropyl alcohol, which does evaporate. So we do have to keep that. That's one of our consumables that we've kind of worked into our pricing for. We put the piece in here, it agitates and washes it around in that. And then afterwards, it can come out and go into this machine here, which does curing. So all of these pieces here, this is one of our resin pieces. You can see that. These will go into the curing machine and they get cured for a while. It uses UV light and heat to kind of solidify the chemical properties of the material. Not all of it needs it, but some of them do. And then with the MakerBot, when we were talking about pricing, we charge per gram of material and we weigh that afterwards. So the part comes out, the machine or the software does give us a little bit of an example of what it could cost, but we don't know until the very end. So we can give them an estimate of what it's going to be when they start the print, and they can decide whether, okay, I don't want to do that, or I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then usually what happens is it's actually a little bit less than what the software estimated. With the Form 2, we use the volume that the software gives us. There's not a great way to do it. We talked to Form Labs, and they said that the best way to do it is to go by the volume that the software gives when you're loading it into the machine. So we charge per milliliter for this one, and the software will give us that information. And then moving on in the room, we have our sublimation and printing stations. So this is our sublimation printer. This is a standard Epson EcoTank printer, and it's filled with a special kind of ink that can be evaporated when it comes in contact with heat, and it gets soaked into fabric. The best fabric to use for it is a polyester fabric, but it can be put on cotton. After a while, it can kind of fade away. Light colors are the best because there's nothing underneath it to keep it from fading away into the color that you have. So if you had a dark gray t-shirt, for example, and you were trying to put something on that, it would start to fade away and the colors would not be as vibrant as they would on white. So this is very heavily used, and especially with a lot of our entrepreneurs, they come in and they'll create mouse pads, they'll create phone cases with it, they'll do t-shirts. We do have one of our entrepreneurs comes in and she sews and makes clothes. She takes her clothes then and she customizes them with sayings on the fronts of them. She creates all kinds of stuff and then puts them on them. So that's our sublimation. And then we've just started branching into, this is another EcoTank. This is another Epson EcoTank, but this is a 6 ink printer. So it has a pigment black and a gray rather than just a black. So this one does really, really high quality photo prints, and we have several different kinds of paper, and I don't know how well this will show up, but this is one of our metallic papers that we do offer. These came from Red River, and then we have all of them marked in here as what they are, and if it has a dot, then that means that that's a paper that we keep stocked inside the bridge. If it's not something that we tell patrons that they can go to Red River and they can purchase that for themselves. It's a website that they can go and get the paper. So if they see something in there that they like, we got the sample packs. We're not limiting to just what we have. Patrons can bring in material and they can print on it too. So this is something.
Paula, we have a question coming in. I'm just going to hop in. It's about the 3D printer. They asked, do you cover the design, engineering, 3D modeling aspects, so using the CAD software, Blender, etc., or just the process of preparing an existing 3D model for printing?
Both. A lot of our patrons do come in with a design that they've found in something like Thingiverse or PinShaper, but we do have some patrons that come in with something that is they might come in with a piece that's kind of broken. And in that instance, they'd like to create this piece to kind of look exactly the way that they've got it. We walk them through the process. Typically what we use with that, most things can be done, we found, with the free software called Tinkercad. And it's incredibly easy to use. It's basically drag and drop geometric shapes. You put those in there, you can modify them, and you can put other pieces together, combine them to make parts that have a unique shape that you can't get inside of the list of materials or the list of shape that's on there. But we do go through and walk them through that process too and teach them the design process. That's the part that can take the longest with the 3D printer, getting the machine up and running and changing the filaments and taking the piece out when it's done is fairly quick, but the design process is what can be very lengthy because a lot of people don't have any experience with that. Blender is a great one for people who have moved on to like the next steps. So we start everybody with Tinkercad, and if they're showing promise with that, then we move them to Blender. But most of the time, if they're moving to Blender, they've kind of moved a little bit out of our range. So we've given them all the information that we can at that point, and then Blender's a little bit out of our hands. Did that answer the question? I hope. Okay, so moving on then, we have another printer here that we're working on. This one is a toner printer that's capable of printing with white toner. You can load the white toner in with this one. It's called Ghost Toner, and you load it in where the black goes. If you print out something and it's entirely in black and white, what you're going to get is white where the black was. The printer doesn't know that it's not a black cartridge, and it doesn't know that you're not putting in white paper. So you can stick in black paper in this one and you can print full white on top of that. It's supposed to be able to do toner transfers, which are a little bit different than the sublimation. They're able to go on full cotton, similar to like a vinyl. There's heat transfer vinyl that you can cut on a Cameo or a Cricut or something like that. And then you can iron that onto the material that you're using. It's similar to that, but you can do full color with it. We have yet to have a successful one with that. So kind of what we're doing at this point is it's just being used as a white toner printer, which has been requested by patrons too. In the future, I'd like to hopefully figure out how to get that working, but we're still working on that. And then we have our heat pressing station. So sublimation, anything that if someone wants to try a toner print, they can do that. We have had people that have done sublimation, and then there's like powders that you can put on top of it. They run a heat gun over the top of that, and then that's supposed to be able to make it go onto cotton, which has varying degrees of success. We've had people come in and it worked really well for them. We've had other people that they've come in and they say they wouldn't recommend it. We don't offer that in the bridge, but they can take something and they can work on it at home and then bring it in and use the heat press. There is really no charge for actually using the heat press. The charge comes from any of the heat transfer vinyl or the sublimation print that they're going to do with that. So this machine, it's a basic heat press, but we also have a bunch of different attachments underneath that you can do mugs, you can do cups, you can do tumblers, you can do hats, plates, and all of those you can change the heat press at the top and you can make it fit whatever you're actually trying to do with it. Most of what happens is t-shirts, but occasionally we do have things that people will do. Like this is glass, and it was coated with a sublimation coating that made it possible to put the ink on top of it. So it kind of has a little bit of brush marks and everything, but it is possible to do that. And this was what I was talking about with cotton versus. So this is a full cotton t-shirt, and this is a sublimation print on the top of the cotton. So it's kind of a little bit faded, especially compared to, you'll have to kind of ignore the fact that this was my first time, so I moved it a little bit, but the colors are more vibrant and you can see it a lot better, and it holds up to washing. Then on the back of this, I have an example of our most successful toner transfer, which I don't think anybody can even tell what that is, but it's the picture from Star Wars. So that's our most successful one that we've gotten out of that. So we have a lot of work to do, and that's one of the things that Austin and I are in here doing. We test, we kind of, between the two of us, what if this is possible? Okay, we'll come and test it. Yeah, okay, that's not possible. There's a lot of failing that goes into it, but that's just part of the process. And that actually ends up being kind of fun sometimes, because then you really know, like, there is just no way to make a toner transfer go onto a piece of acrylic or something like that. So there's something to be said with failing, and we've failed enough in here, so we kind of know some of the things that we're doing with this. But on the back, we have our library of things. This was not part of the bridge originally, and it actually wasn't a piece of the library until maybe 5 years ago, even that long ago. You don't remember, do you?
I don't know.
Okay. I can't remember exactly when it became a thing, but it was out on the main part of the library floor. It was kind of outgrowing its space too, and when we moved into this room, we had enough space that we could get all of our bigger equipment in here, have a little bit of room that we could grow still, and have the library of things in here. And this houses all of the stuff that people can check out that's outside of regular books and DVDs and audio materials. We've got overhead projectors, we have slide projectors, we have reel-to-reel machines, we have all kinds of stuff that people can take out of here. We also have a collection of giant yard games. So we've got cornhole and Yardzy and all kinds of stuff that people can use for events. We have tents, things that people can check out. So this is in addition to the library of things, is in addition to the bridge. And we didn't have room for it before, but we've grown enough to include it now. This is our computer station where all of the designing stuff is done, where all of the software is, where patrons can put their kind of ideas into files, and then those files can be used for all of the machines. So we're looking to expand a little bit with this, because this can get filled up with somebody creating something and somebody doing something on the Glowforge, but somebody else is ready to create. So we're kind of working on expanding that, because some of these machines do double duty. This machine here in the front is our Cameo. We did not start with a large 24-inch Cameo. It's similar to a Cricut for anybody who's never heard of a Cameo. We started with a small 12-inch Cameo that was able to cut vinyl and heat transfer vinyls, which is what we were doing a lot of at the time. Then that one got broken, because there are pieces on there that get a lot of movement. So it got broken after a little while and had to upgrade. So we upgraded to the new machine. And then that one wore down and started making grinding noises. So we had to upgrade again. So this one's definitely a machine that people can have in their homes. And a lot of people do have something like this, but not typically the large format ones. They have the 12-inch, or I think there's even a 6-inch one. And Cricut does have, now they do have a large format machine, which does look incredible. So this one, we can do all kinds of, now we can actually take something from the poster printer when we print something on our large format printer, put it in here and cut something out. So there's adhesive vinyls that are similar to like a wall decal that they can cut inside of this. And before we go any further, I actually wanted to show everybody that we do advertise all of the pricing. So on the wall, we do have posters that have all of the pricing for the different materials and the different machines. So they're kind of grouped by, like, this is all of our poster printing prices, and then our MakerBot and our CNC machine and our Glowforge. That's how we let patrons know kind of what that's going to be, and they can use this to figure that out for themselves. So if they're kind of like, I want a poster that's going to be 3 feet long, and I'm going to do it in heavyweight, they can take that amount and kind of figure that out. And we also do a checkout form that can be taken up to the desk, and this has an area for them to be able to put in the amount that they're using, but they can also track it while they're printing it too. So if they're coming in and they're doing 3 posters, they can track how many feet of poster paper that they used for that. And then they can total that up and take it up to the desk, and they can pay for it up there. That's something that we teach all of our certified patrons how to do. So they come in, they grab one of those when they walk in, they grab a dry erase marker, and they start totaling up all the stuff that they're using in the room, and then they take it and pay for it. So, okay, we'll go a little bit slow so we don't make anybody see that. But some of our vinyls can be put onto coffee cups and mugs and things, and we don't recommend washing them in a dishwasher, but hand washing, they hold up very nicely. That's another thing that this machine can do. Let's go to the CNC, and then we'll kind of end with the. So this is our CNC. It's X-Carve CNC machine. It is one of their largest ones. Reality, I probably wouldn't recommend this machine to many people because one thing, you have to build it when it gets here. It comes in several boxes and many little tiny pieces, and you have to put the entire thing together, and it's a beast to put together. It took us about a week to put it together. And even when it's put together, there are things that patrons will bring in a sheet of plywood that they want to have cut into it, but they don't leave enough extra space on the outsides. And so it's not capable of being super precise. It occasionally, you think you have something loaded into it right, and the piece will shift a little bit while you're actually cutting it, which is not great. And then the entire piece can end up ruined because by the time you actually make it to the shut off, it has cut into a part that you didn't want it to cut. We have had some successes come out of it, but a lot of the times we end up with things that are just, they're needing to be fixed after they come out. And that's not always the greatest thing for a patron leaving with something that's sort of messed up. So this machine does use a spinning router. It is a typical woodworking router. This is a Makita router. And we have eye protection and a wall barrier that we put up in front of the machine here to keep dust and debris from blowing out. And we do require that people do wear eye protection when they're actually using this machine. It requires typically two people to actually get the full thing going. So Austin and I have yet to actually certify anybody on this machine. I don't even actually know if our patrons feel completely comfortable to be certified on it yet, because I think that they want somebody here as sort of a backup for it. So it's not something that I would say is, we thought it had great potential, and I think it could, but I think it's a little bit outside of our capabilities at the moment. And so we're trying to work into that one a little bit, but it is here and it has been used. So with a couple modifications to it.
Do you have any samples?
I do actually. This is one of our entrepreneurs was working on this, and I think this was one of the most successful pieces that we have got out of this. So this is her company, her business logo. And then she was creating a pegboard with this, but I think that she's going to have to drill in the individual holes, because the problem with it was the hole here is supposed to be a round hole, not oval. So the machine started going down and kind of carving into that, and it was cutting it into an oval hole. So she's going to have to drill in her own holes for her dowels to stick out of. But this is an example of what it can do, and it'll carve into that. Then it just needs to be sanded and painted up afterwards. So the one comment that we have had on it is that it's just not as precise and clean as, for example, our Glowforge, which we're going to go over to in a second. And these were the hobby horse, that horse heads that we cut out for the stone trace thing. And then they got a dowel rod stuck up inside of the bottom of them. and the kids got to ride them around. So it was kind of fun, and that was a pretty successful one. I don't have the horses here; they went over to our Cromwell location, but there's the scrap material at least. So the Glow Forge is this machine over here. It is capable of laser engraving many different types of materials. It can cut through certain types of plywood, certain types of leather, acrylic, veneer. We've engraved paper with it. We've cut cardstock on it too when we needed to do something like that. We've used it for our Halloween event that we do. We created a bunch of boxes that had magic wands in them, and we engraved name on top of them. So this machine is very capable, very precise. And we have some of our entrepreneurs that have businesses will come in and they'll create custom woodworking projects or leather crafts, and they'll engrave something that they have either created and designed somewhere. Canva is a great place to start with some of that stuff. Then you can import it into other software and have it converted into a laser file. But it's capable of creating all kinds of stuff and just cutting through things too. So here we've got a piece with an example of a flexible joint that was created just using different types of shapes. And then the different types of engraved depths and the power and speed give you different looks when you're actually engraving on something. You can get very detailed with it. You can get very kind of ornate with it. This entire thing here was created with cardboard. And it's a kind of a copy of the Mirror of Erised from Harry Potter. And it took quite a while to actually cut that out and to then paint it and put it all together. But this is many different pieces, and it was all done on the Glow Forge and then pieced together to be able to have something for our Halloween event to use. So this is one of our big machines. This one is used quite often, and like I mentioned, we have to replace air filters with it. It's amazing, and it's been very heavily used. And I think that it's coming kind of to the end of its life because it's so heavily used. So we're trying to figure out an upgrade for it and an update for it. So we'll see how that goes. And then we have this kind of begins our large format machine, our large format printer. So we have all of our different types of paper that are here. And we have everything ranging from just plain paper that feels similar to copy paper, all the way up to really rugged canvas. And that can all be printed on our large format printer. We have patrons that come in, they'll do things for, and Austin's going to start a project so that we can see something coming out. But we have patrons that will come in and do things for the business, or we've had the town come in and create banners for town-wide events, and they'll hang those up. Usually we tell people that they need to coat it with something if they want it to hold up to any of the weather elements. But it's a fairly quick machine, and people think that it's not going to be because it's so large, but it prints out fairly quickly. You can kind of see that. We teach patrons how to change the paper with it. We teach patrons how to change inks, and what to do if it runs out of ink in the middle of a print, because it can do that. And then there's a way to change the ink that it's going.
I know that's probably not the same one that was in the original Makerspace, but I was really impressed when I took a tour a few years back that you guys would make like big crossword puzzles for people like the seniors, and big pieces of like things they could draw, coloring books. I thought that was really cool.
We have done that before. We did used to have large coloring sheets that we would put out in the public area. I haven't really done that since about 2020-ish. But we did have large coloring sheets that people could put out. We did large crosswords. We did large word searches, that was really fun. I think right now we might have a large format Sudoku in the back, which is another cool thing. But some of those things did go to on like outreachy type things too. So they would go to the nursing home and be a fun activity to do. So
We have a
uh,
question about Glowforge training. Can you recommend where to go for Glowforge training?
so does that, I suppose, does that mean that it's a like how to use the machine or how to design for it or everything?
Well, let's see what she says, but I'm assuming how to use the machine. If you
Or
could
if
give us some more. She said everything.
Everything. Okay. Um, YouTube is great for learning that. There are a lot of entrepreneurs that do have the Glowforge. As far as like creating a design to send to it, we have patrons that create in all different software. Then they come in here, and as long as we have it in some form of an image file, we can take it into our Silhouette software, which we also use to run the Cameo, and then we can convert that into an SVG file. And so we tell patrons if they're going to jump straight to that step, if they create something as an SVG, that's a 36-inch poster done. But they can create an SVG and they can come in and they can pop that straight into the machine and go. The machine is very simple to use, but you can't really experiment with it until you actually have a, and the colors are really good with it too. They're very bright and vibrant.
maybe you could go to another place, library, that has one and get some pointers.
Yes, you could do that. They don't allow you into using the software or looking at it unless you have a machine. You have to have a machine before you can actually do it. The X-Carve is very similar to this. So there's not really a way to test out that software ahead of time, but I can assure you that it is very simple to use. But there's a website you go to and you upload your files into it, and it's all settings after that. There are places that have like Excel sheets. I think one of them is actually a Google sheet that there's a community of people that update that sheet, and they put in, I got this material from Home Depot, and these are the settings that I use to engrave it. These are the settings that I use to try and cut through it. I wouldn't recommend cutting through it. I think I still have access to that, and if I can find that in time, I can put it into the. I can see if I can get you to be able to put it in the notes, but that's a great spot to jump off too, because there are materials that are outside of the Glowforge proof grade materials that they have settings set for, that you have to come up with your own. And what we recommend to patrons when they do that is that they come in with some extra of what they need to do some test cuts or test prints on before they cut the big piece. Because if they do that, they're kind of out if it doesn't go all the way through, or if it doesn't engrave deep enough, or it doesn't look the way they wanted it to. So those settings can sometimes be 2 or 3, 4 times before we actually get the correct settings for that piece. And then as far as materials go, we do always tell people that they should check with the manufacturer before they bring in something to make sure that it is laser safe. There are materials that aren't laser safe, and particularly with acrylics. There are some acrylics that are created with formaldehyde, and when that's cut with a laser, it does become toxic. So that's something that we always double check with the patron before they come in, and we look it up and make sure that everything is good with that material. And like, where did you get it? Was it laser safe when you bought it? Did you see that mentioned? And then we'll look that up sometimes too, and kind of make sure that they're good with that. Typically, we have people come in and they've ordered something from it's acrylic from Etsy, or it's acrylic from an acrylic sales store, and they'll have a little logo on it that says that it is laser safe. So that right off the bat tells us that it is. We don't have a lot of problems with that. But then we have our giant supply wall, and this has everything that the patrons can use rolled in here, and even some scrap bins that they can stick some extra scraps in that maybe somebody else could use a little piece of. We've got our 3D printer filaments, we have our sublimation papers and extra papers for the plotter printer. We have our vinyls, our heat transfer vinyl, and our adhesive vinyls and everything that's there. And then if you kind of in the room here, I don't know if I don't know if this can be seen, but up on top of the wall there, that's some of our adhesive vinyl that was printed on the poster printer. And it's stuck to the wall and it is a clean remove. So similar to the wall clings that you can buy, people come in and they can make those here too. And that's the room.
Great. I'm going to see if I can do some. I'm going to take you over to where the room was. Now, I don't know how well this will be seen.
Okay.
We'll try it. Then I'll come back and sit. Oh, good idea to open the door if you want.
So we started basically across the library in that room there, which is now our teen area. Give a little tour of the library a little bit, but that's now our teen space. So that was where we started, and the front doors are basically directly out from the front of that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back.
So this is a little bit more tucked into a corner, but the entire side of it here that faces out to the library is encased in glass. It's very visible.
Awesome. So I guess we'll sit back down and see if anybody has any questions.
I'm not seeing anything right now. If anybody has any questions for Derrick, Austin, or Paula, please go ahead and put those in the chat box.
Why don't we, I know we did this in the beginning. You want to do what I'm using? I'm using a gimbal. It's called the iSteady Mobile Plus to put my phone in. If Derrick wants to show you how I'm doing it,
This
you
is
can.
what she's got. She came with it to test out things, and we thought it was so cool that we decided that we wanted to get one too. That's actually part of our library of things. This is able to be checked out by patrons, and they can take it and do Facebook Lives or whatever they're wanting with that. You pop a camera or a phone into it, and everything is set up correctly. When you turn it on, it sort of becomes live. And yeah, I had a hard time with this earlier. I think my phone was kind of too big.
Can't remember if the Bluetooth is on or not. If you had to redo that, you wouldn't think you'd have to. Well, it should.
Try it again. We did it earlier. Yeah.
And the thing to know about it, you can't really turn that on until you put your phone in. So he just turned it off. He's going to make sure the Bluetooth is working.
I'm gonna try Austin's phone.
While you're doing that, we have a couple of questions come in that are kind of similar, so I'll do them both at the same time. How did you fund this? And someone else asks, how does most of your funding become available for all of these things? Operating budget, gifts and grants, et cetera, et cetera.
So how the room actually started is it started with our remodel project. So when we were doing a remodel, it was 2015-16 when all of that was happening, and that's what pushed the room and actually kind of gave it teeth to be able to sink in. But since then, a lot of our machine replacement has been out of our tech fund. So any of our technology stuff, it comes out of that. Materials are a little bit different, but like I mentioned, there's a cost for replacing the materials. That doesn't go back into purchasing the materials exactly, but it does help to kind of offset that a little bit. Some of the funding going into the future, that's why we're working a little bit with the EDC to see if there's anything that they can help us with. And the town, we're working with them a little bit too, because entrepreneurial growth is a major part of this, and the town is very supportive of that. And they're wanting to help kind of bolster and support the makerspace here at the library as an opportunity for people to start and grow a business.
Great. We have about 5 minutes left, so if you have any questions, please get those into the chat. We have another one here. Do you have any expansion plans for additional equipment or software, or are you mostly looking to maintain and replace or upgrade what you currently have?
So my problem is that I always have an expansion plan. And it's typically too far out of reach. And so I have to kind of rein that in a little bit. But we do have plans. What we do with our expansion is we typically follow what the patrons are wanting. We have patrons in who they're in here and they would say something like, oh, it would be nice if you did this, or it would be nice if you had this as an offering in here too, or do you have this kind of material for the poster printer, for example, or something like that. When they ask those questions, we pay attention to that. We will sometimes write those down or research into whether that's even possible with our current equipment. And then we kind of watch to see if more people are requesting something like that. If we're getting a good response for it, that's when we expand into a new type of material, or we expand into a new machine. There are some things that we do make decisions on, like we're going to add another 3D printer, or we're going to add an embroidery machine, which we did have an embroidery machine in here. Actually, that's a good point. That was one of the pieces that didn't go over well. It started off going great and we had a lot of people using it, and then it died. It wasn't being used for quite a long time. It might have been over a year, since it had actually been used. So it was one of the pieces that was weeded out. And that's part of our expansion plan too, is to watch what's not being used anymore. It may have been used very heavily in the beginning, but since then it's kind of died away. And rather than replacing that piece or upgrading it, we remove it and make room for something new. So it's not a constant, always growing bigger, but a lot of the times we're replacing machines that are very heavily used and can be kind of worn down. Our platter printer, for example, was one that we started off with a 24-inch variant of that, and it got used so much that the gears kind of crumbled away on it. And so we knew, okay, this is a very heavily used machine, so we would like to upgrade. And we had patrons who were wanting to print 36-inch wide by 46-inch wide, and they're 48-inch wide or something like that. And we weren't able to do that with our other machine. So we upgraded to fit those patron needs. So following what the patrons are asking for has been one of our key things for actually successfully implementing this, listening to their request.
Great,
And doing
thank
what we can
you.
do.
We have about 1 minute left. I have one question, but for those of you watching an archived recording of this, information on how to get your LEU are going to be in the YouTube description. Also, Paula will send out LEUs to the live attendees in the next couple of weeks. Our last question for today is for Austin. What is your absolute favorite thing in this room?
Oh, besides myself, I would probably say the glow forge. I really like the glow forge. I'm actually not a very creative person when it comes to like arts and crafts. But I love technology. And I think that the design process of the glow forge is the most intuitive maybe. And the glow forge is also, the design process is similar to the Cameo. So both of those go hand in hand kind of, but I really like the glow forge, the engraving, the cutting. I would go with that. With the wood, the draft boards, the people have even brought in slate to engrave on, and that turns out really well.
Oh, that's a very cool one.
Yeah, the slate is nice.
Great,
great.
thank you.
And this has been awesome. And thank you so much to Austin and to Derrick and to Courtney for doing this. And I hope you didn't get seasick.
It was great.